Genshin 5.2's banners are packed with OP DPSs, with the Ororon as the cherry on top. With so many cool banners to choose from, it's very hard to choose who to spend your Primogems on. Today, I aim to help you decide who to spend your precious Primogems on, evaluating who will get you the most bang for your buck depending on your account setup. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. A quick note before we begin. This video serves as a nice TLDR of who you should consider pulling for. I'll be making individual videos on each character that's coming up to evaluate their individual pros and cons more in depth, which will help you better decide whether you want them or not. Okay, cool, let's go. Kicking things right off with Chasca, her whole gimmick is being an Animo DPS that deals in infusion damage. No Farazan required here, since the majority of her DPS isn't gonna be green numbers. Nope, you're much more likely to see her damage profile taste the rainbow, as she's able to infuse her bullets with pyro, hydro, cryo, and electro damage. Most of the time, you're gonna ignore her ability to infuse with cryo. Her best in slot team comps lend her to being a soup team DPS, consisting of Bennett, Farina, and then either Fischl or Ororon. That'll be her most common setup. You should consider it to be more of a soup comp as opposed to anything vape related, because you can't control the order of which she applies elements, so vaping won't be consistent. She's absolutely one of the most unique Animo carries that we've gotten in recent times, keeping in with the trend of Not-Line units having super interesting mechanics. She also flies around on a gun, which, as insane as that is, does indeed have its own positive qualities, such as being the new fastest form of overworld travel, being useful for avoiding enemy attacks in the Abyss, and having one of the longest ability uptimes when within Not-Lan's borders. Of course, you also have to consider that she's a single target DPS with a super heavy emphasis on it. Her bullets literally continually divide down to shoot individual enemies when there is more than one target. Being released in a patch where they're rerunning one of the best single target DPSs right next to her, and the best DPS in the entire game after her banner passes, arguably the best character depending on who you ask, is a little rough. Considering how gimmicky Chasca is and how she feels really signature weapon locked when Neuvillette can eat the Abyss alive on a prototype Amber, it's incredibly difficult to recommend her when Lyney and Neuvillette are just infinitely better, especially Neuvillette, who unlike Lyney, requires zero skill expression whatsoever if you want to make the most out of him. She also just can't use proc-based characters, such as Xingqiu, Yolan, and Fischl C6. That seriously hurts her team flexibility. Fischl is one of Chasca's best teammates, but her C6 is a big help to her damage output, so even though it's technically a good synergy, she gets a bit gimped in this team. Think of it like using C0 Chiori in an Avia team to a lesser extent. It's good by technicality, but Chiori herself is getting gimped by the lack of constructs. Mualani is a way better single target Not-Lan DPS too. I'm gonna be honest, things are looking really rough for Chasca, because if you look at it from a pull value perspective, there really isn't much reason as to why you would choose her over any other recent DPS unit aside from personally enjoying the character. I think that others are gonna get a much bigger boost from Mavuika's release too. Chasca certainly feels like the underdog unit here, because Mualani after Mavuika might unironically rival post-Shilon and Neuvillette and become a Celestia killer. I expect Kenichi's pure burning teams to get a buff too. I'm sure Chasca will receive some benefits as well, but the other two have a much more powerful base to work with. She's going down into B tier when it comes to the value rankings for this patch. Sadly, one of the worst 5 stars to come out of Not-Lan thus far, but she'll still have her place. Ah yes. Finally, they're rerunning the guy that I've been hyping up for weeks at this stage. I've got a proper excuse to yap about him now. He's the second best pyro DPS in the game, rivaled by only Arlecchino. Assuming C0R1, he can actually do more damage than Arla in single target, but you have to be a really good player to pull that off. At C0R1, they're actually very close in damage. This is assuming that you're playing him in Vape, which is his real best team. You want to use Farina over Xiangling, always. Vaping plus having access to your damage bonus percent buffs is always going to be stronger than fully filling out his pyro passive. You still fill out most of it with Lyney himself and Bennett. The additional damage you get from the vape nukes is more than worth it. However, there are some scenarios where you actually want to use Xiangling over Kazuha. You never drop Farina, keep that in mind. But there are actually some multi-wave scenarios where you use a team of Lyney, Farina, Bennett, and Xiangling if Kazuha's VV isn't working in a situation due to uptime, and Xiangling helping out with AoE damage. He has one of the best single target performances in the game, and is a fantastic speedrunner unit if you know what you're doing. Even if you refuse to accept that he plays in Vape, then he's still an absolutely fantastic mono pyro unit. In his vanilla teams, he's still better than every other pyro DPS aside from Arla, who's better. But yes, even when he released in 4.0, every other Pyro DPS took a hit, because even his shielded mono Pyro teams are something to write home about. He does damage, and a lot of it. Genuinely an S tier unit. His biggest flaw is that he's only an S tier unit if you can actually play the guy. Furina's Hydro application isn't the most consistent thing on the planet, as our three little guys apply whatever amount of Hydro whenever they feel like it. So let's hope you don't miss any vapes. He can also feel a bit rough to play shieldless for some people. I find it fine, it's not much of an issue in my opinion, but it varies from person to person. No matter how much of a Lyney glazer I am, I'll always recommend Ororon and Neuvillette over him, not only because they do more damage, but because they're so much easier to play. Everyone can understand that those two are good, because their playstyles don't demand much skill whatsoever. It does kinda drive me nuts though when non-Lyney believers praise Mualani. Guys, they are like the same thing. The Shark Surfer is better, but she's actually harder to play optimally, but she's easier to play on average, and her easy-to-use teams are better than Lyney's easy-to-use teams, so that checks out, I suppose. The issue is that Lyney is extremely unpopular too. Not many people know how he actually plays. Look at his ownership percentage from the most reliable source that gathers his data. Lyney has had 2 banners. Look at Arlecchino. She has had 1 run. Alright, I was going a little nuts when I said he completely isn't a charge attack DPS. He does do a fair bit of them, but the main point I want to get across is that he's not like Ganyu. The GOAT deals sustained damage over time, whereas Lyney's rotations are a lot more front-loaded. But yes, if you don't like charge shots, he does do about 2 to 3 of them per rotation to build up stacks, so keep that in mind. I will be blunt, if you're bad at this game, don't pull for him. He's going to feel okay at best. And if you're willing to learn him, yes, he is 100% worth your pull. If you already have a C0R1 Arla, you don't need Lyney in all honesty, but if you're a min-maxer that wants faster clear times on bosses, then go for it. Do keep in mind that if you choose to get Arla constellations, then she becomes a lot better than Lyney by a pretty large margin. Not because his cons are bad, more so because his dad has, you know, the best constellation lineup in all of Genshin Impact. Another flaw of his is that he really wants a 5-star weapon. He'll still be strong on a 4-star, but if you want the incredible breakthrough unit that I sing the praises of any chance I get, you want Aqua Simulacra or the first Great Magic. Either of the two will be fine. Other than that, you can look forward to his mono pyro teams most likely getting a massive upgrade in 5.3 with Mavu Ika. I sincerely hope she's a Shangling replacement without ER issues. We'll have to wait and see as to whether she can make mono pyro as good as Lyney's vape teams. But if the buffs that she offers the Magician are as good as what Furina provides the team, then it could easily rival it, because then you get the best of both worlds. Crazy buffs and fully filling out his pyro passive. However, it's more likely that instead, we'll see Kazuha get replaced in favor of Lyney, Furina, Bennett, and Mavu Ika teams, especially in multi-wave. This will be the upgrade to the team that I mentioned earlier that forgoes Kazuha in favor of the Liyue chef, which has the potential to easily become Lyney's new best-in-slot team, but the core point here stays the same. We can fully expect Mavu Ika to be a huge Lyney buff. S tier in the value rankings, easily. But if you're interested in him due to my constant glazing, make sure to research Vape Lyney runs and evaluate whether you're willing to learn him or not. He is worth the reward, but keep in mind that Arla is 20 times easier to play while offering more damage and better team versatility. Ah yes, the Geo Archon. Finally, he's good with 2 of the other units who'll be available this patch, Neuvillette and Lyney. Here's the deal with him. He'll never really be best in slot, but will still be the most solid defensive option in plenty of modern teams if you're struggling with dodging. Zhongli's also not a complete and utter loss to DPS thanks to his powerful 20% universal res shred. That's pretty good compensation for losing a potentially offensive team slot to a defensive one. He's been really good with plenty of recently strong units, such as Mualani and Arlecchino for example. He's very handy for helping out fragile DPSs when they have to deal with super stagger heavy battles, or when we have abysses like the current one with a lot of geo shields on the second half. He's one of the most versatile characters in the game because he's able to effectively work in a crazy amount of teams. Like, this dude is genuinely the only character I can think of aside from the Animos or Shilonen who fits in 50 teams while being good in all of them. Sure, perhaps not best in slot, but his value in a team also heavily depends on you as a player. Do you suck, or is your mobile device really laggy? Do the enemies load in super late for you? Then Zhongli is probably a DPS increase for you because you'd have a much harder time staying alive and actually dealing damage to the enemies otherwise. Or are you a speedrunner who achieves 0.1 second continuous clears? Then Zhongli sucks to you because he's a defensive option that offers little in the way of damage. So when considering whether you want him or not, make sure to take note of how good you are at the game or how well your device runs. There's also the double Geo Chiori core that you can use him very nicely, or traditional Ito mono Geo teams. He's great there as well. Shilonen Chiori is better than Zhongli Chiori because that's just how good the DJ's buffs are, but Rex Lapis is still a formidable option. Generally a great all-rounder unit. He's by no means a necessity, especially once you get quite good at dodging, but he's still really handy to own, and 99% of Zhongli owners are gonna tell you that owning him made their gameplay experience way smoother. It also helps that he's super comfy in the overworld, and his pillar is quite nice to climb to reach high places in exploration. It was a big help to me back when I was collecting every Inazuma Oculus. His constellations suck though, don't get them, and let's just pretend like Vortex Vanquisher doesn't exist. However, his C6 does have a niche use of being good with Farina, so you can run a team of Hu Tao, Yolan, Farina, and Zhongli, and he can act as a team's healer. But dude, let's be real, I highly doubt that anybody watching this is going for C6 on him. Unless you are, let me know down below in the comments. A tier in the value rankings. His ranking can go up or down depending on how much you personally value what he offers. I'd say he's objectively one of the most subjective characters in the game, if that makes sense. Right, Mr. Settle Down. SSS plus tier, end of video, bye guys. Nah, alright, just kidding. But seriously though, when you're in the running for being the best character in the game, it's pretty clear that your pull value is through the roof. While I personally think that Farina is the best character in the game, when somebody tells me that they think Neuvillette is the best, I say, yeah, that checks out. It's literally just a matter of principle at this stage. Do you really want to say a DPS is the best character when a support can be used anywhere? Farina makes every team good, which is why I value her more, but Neuvillette is a top 3 character, perhaps even top 2, no questions asked. Especially after Shilonen came out, the Celestia killer team is the funniest team that you will ever play. I have no idea what the game balancing team over at Hoyoverse is thinking. I'm convinced that the entire office is full of his biggest simps, because otherwise, why does he keep getting a buff every other day? Guys, finally Neuvillette got a new buff, he's finally playable. Shilonen C2 as well. Oh boy, yeah, the meta is permanently cooked. Listen, I will glaze Lyney to the ends of the earth in the same way that Argenti glazes Adrilla, but Neuvillette makes Lyney look like a joke. He makes Arlecchino look like a joke. He makes everybody who is not on his side look like a fool. He really wasn't kidding when he said, "Let the mighty be humbled," huh? It's actually becoming comical to me how good he is. He requires 0 skill expression, can play with any teammates ever, is amazing for both new and old players alike, is good for skilled and skill-issued players alike, is good for free-to-plays and whales alike, and guys, I think Hoyoverse has made another mistake unit. You know the ones, Bennett, Shangling, Xingqiu, except this time it's a 5-star. Good luck worming your way out of this mess, Hoyo. His DPS is hilariously high with no effort required whatsoever. It's insane that he is genuinely good for every type of player. Yes, you check outside your window tonight, and if you hear judge bells, then run. SS plus tier in the value rankings. Every character wishes they were him. If you don't have him, this is genuinely the only unit that I think is worth risking your Primogems and 50/50s over before Mavuika. But before taking my word on that, wait for the 5.3 livestream, because he's second half after all. You get the idea though, he's strong. Last but certainly not least, we have Ororon. He's going to be a massive buff for all kinds of taser teams. He's going to be a massive upgrade over Beto and 4-star taser, working quite nicely alongside Fischl. His damage is certainly nothing to sneeze at, while also being able to proc 4-piece in Intercity within taser. He's going to become the new best in slot in many electrocharged cores, while also being able to fit comfortably into overvape teams. It helps that his electro application is good too. He's definitely worth building taser teams around, as he offers a really formidable amount of DPS in exchange. He's going to work very efficiently with Chasca, who can utilize his kit fully as he doesn't rely on procs whatsoever. He'll most likely be your best in slot Electro teammate at C6 for sure. Electrocharged buffs are turning it into a competitive free-to-play team option once again, making Ororon a serious choice for newer players or people who enjoy 4-star teams. Definitely one of the best 4-star characters that we've gotten in recent times. He's keeping up with the excellent pace that Kachina set at the beginning of Notlan, while bringing an old, forgotten team archetype back into the spotlight. He's giving Electrocharged a real fighting chance again, which is excellent to see. A tier in the value rankings below Zhongli. Truly a formidable unit that's worth your time. I myself am really excited to test him out when he releases. You can make the argument for going above Zhongli, but I feel like the Geo Archon has enough effective versatility to remain higher in value. I will be honest with you, as insanely stacked as the banners are this patch, along with the amazing new 4-star that they're releasing, I'd approach 5.2 with extreme caution. Hoyo is clearly trying to drain us of all of our primos when Mavuika is right around the corner. She's obviously going to be insanely meta-defining, buffing every single not long character that came out before her. So before you pull on any banners this patch, stop and think. If you want Movuika, can you still realistically get her if you get anyone this patch? Regardless, it's definitely strong bait for sure. Damn you, Hoyoverse. But what do you think of Genshin 5.2's banners? Will you be pulling on any of them, or is it a complete and utter skip all the way until Movuika? Let me know down below in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Hopefully this video was able to tell you who'd get you the best bang for your Primogems in version 5.2. This has been Juice, signing out, and see you in 5.3 when Neuvillette gets a new buff that lets him deal 500k damage every charged blast on a level 1 Eye of Perception.